Hello and welcome back to AB Geography. Today I'm going to be looking at Section B of Paper 2, which is the UK's Evolving Human Landscape, and the core concepts that you need to be aware of for Section B, and then leading into the London case study. Okay, so are you ready? Are you ready, Sir David? Are you ready? He's ready. Okay, let's do this. So don't forget, this is the paper. You've got the section on physical landscape, which I've done, the section on evolving human landscape, which I'm doing now, and then your fieldwork. When you get onto section C, if you're from Orion Spires, remember to do question 8 and question 10. Urban, no coasts, urban. Right. So the key concepts, the most important slide. 1. The population structure in the urban core is different to rural areas, and you need to be able to describe how it's different and why it's different. 2. Migration has had a significant impact on the UK's population, both its structure, okay, and where people live. So at a national scale and also at a local scale. The types of jobs, 3, that people do for a living have changed, primarily due to our favourite word, deindustrialisation. So the economic structure and the employment structure has changed. So people have moved from primary and secondary employment into tertiary and quaternary, also known as the knowledge economy. Globalisation, FDI, foreign direct investment, and TNCs, transnational companies, have impacted the UK economy, particularly in London. We then look at London in a bit more detail. So where is it? Why is it important nationally and internationally? How has migration impacted its population structure? And how have processes such as deindustrialisation and decline impacted inner city areas in particular? There's a little bit on the impact of the city on the rural areas, primarily linked to the fact that those close to urban areas have experienced growth, whereas rural areas further away from urban areas or more remote have experienced decline. So let's get ready for our core concepts. Right, I'm going to work my way round the clock here. So the first thing to look at is the UK population density. And we can see on this map that the southeast is more densely populated and central area is more densely populated than places like Scotland, Wales and the north. Okay, then in between these areas here. And you know why, because it links to the idea of uplands and lowlands, but it also links to employment. This area is very heavily densely populated because this was the industrial heart of England. That's where the iron was, where the coal was, and that's where the factories are, okay? And there's still a lot of people that live there. So that's the first thing. Where do people live? Why do they live there? Why is everyone being drawn to the southeast? The next thing then to look at is the population structure of the urban areas compared to the rural areas, the urban core compared to the rural areas, and how that's changing over time. And we can see that over time there are more people of a younger age living in the urban areas because they're there for work, aren't they? They're the economically active people. This therefore pushes the birth rate up. And then as people get older, they move into the rural areas either for a better quality of life, or they may be moving to a rural area close to the city, still working in the city, but again, moving away. So there's retirement. Young people moving to the city where there are opportunities. Okay, so you may be asked to explain or compare the population structures of the urban core compared to the rural areas. We know that immigration has had a significant impact on the demographics or the population structure of the UK. That immigration has happened over quite a long period of time and continues to happen now, with people moving to the UK in search of a better quality of life and in search of work. Be really careful now not to mix up the reasons why people are moving to the cities in emerging countries. This is about the UK, okay? Most of the immigrants that come to the UK are coming for work and therefore are more likely to have children, and this therefore has influenced the age structure in the UK, and you can see that you get what we refer to as these bulges here, and therefore the birth rate goes up as well. Okay, make sure you can interpret a population pyramid with confidence, and make sure you understand how immigration has impacted the population structure of the UK. They will just be little 2-mark questions. Core concept number 4 is how the employment that people do in this country has changed. Back in the 60s, look at how many people were employed primarily in manufacturing, and look at what's happened to that by 2011. And we know why. It's due to deindustrialization. Okay, deindustrialization, and that has impacted the north and central parts far more than the southern parts of the UK. Look at the growth in the amount of people employed in tertiary jobs, financial services, tourism, any kind of service, but look what has emerged, and what is emerging is the quaternary sector. So this knowledge economy is starting to emerge now as a main employment opportunity, primarily in the southeast. Sorry, I got a bit distracted there because a child just walked past my window. I was already distracted by all the birds having a bath in the dog bowl outside, but now I'm distracted by the child. Anyway, let's continue. If I was your teacher, you know that random things happen. Right, so they're your core concepts. Where do people live in the UK? How is it different between the urban core and the rural areas? How has immigration impacted the population structure of the UK? And how has what people do for a living changed over time? Okay, keep coming back to this slide. Really important, and it will help you with the 8 marker. Okay, it all comes down to employment opportunities. That is the main reason why people live where they live. And there's been a decline in traditional industries, farming, fishing, forestry, and the heavy industry like manufacturing, steel making, that sort of thing. Right, let's have a look at the zones in a city now. So a city in the UK, or an urban area, can be zoned into some very, very clear areas. The CBD is in the centre, the central business district, associated with very high line values, which is why many of the buildings are tall. It's primarily commercial, financial and retailing, but there is some residential, but that's the main reason. And it is increasingly associated, though, with re-urbanisation, with people moving back into the cities to live in the city centre. Not loads of people, but there is that re-urbanisation. The most important zone is the inner city, and it's the one that is undergoing the most change. That's why it's the most important. Urban process and change. So the inner city grew up around the CBD, primarily on the east, so that all the nasty stuff would blow away, okay, not over the rich people on the west of the city, because the winds come up from here. And this is where all the factories were during the Industrial Revolution, all the way through until that industrial decline, okay? So until deindustrialization, this is where the factories were, and this is where the inner city workers' houses were, which were mainly terraced houses, okay, small terraced houses where all the workers lived. They needed to live next to the factories because it was before the advent of cars, okay, so they needed to be able to walk to the factories. The richer people would have lived in the city centre, and then they started to move out into the suburbs a bit later on, okay, sort of more in sort of the 40s, 50s, that sort of thing. So here you've got deindustrialisation and decline, and increasingly now you've got regeneration, redevelopment, and then if you're aiming high, you can talk about gentrification and studentification, because many of the universities are in the old inner cities or central areas. You've then got your suburbs, inner and outer suburbs. The process is suburbanisation, people moving away from the inner city, moving out to a better quality of life where it's not as noisy. They can get a bigger house with a garden, a drive, it's quieter, cleaner air, etc. And then on the edge, you've got the rural-urban fringe. I'm sorry I'm covering that up. So that's where the countryside meets the city. You get a real mixed land use. So you might get a leisure centre, housing estate, out-of-town shopping centres, big Tesco's, entertainment areas, okay, with cinemas, that sort of thing. And then further out again, you might have a village, and you may get people moving all the way out to the village. It might be on a motorway, it might be near a railway. This is counter-urbanisation, people moving to commuter villages. So rural areas, if they're close to a city and they're well connected, they have experienced growth. Okay, it pushes the land values up and the house prices up. Not great if you're from there, but if the rural area is not very well connected and much further away, it is experiencing decline. Okay, so core concepts and the different zones of the city. I'm now going to go on to have a look at London. This is a bit longer, this one, but you can pause me at any time and you can come back, can't you, and pick up later. So your case study is London. And what I've done in here is I've dropped some slides in for you, so you can always pause and make some notes, but it's located on the River Thames, you know that. The land was flat, so it was easy to build on, and it was where there was a natural bridging point. The Romans settled here first, it was Londinium. That is all you need to know. But the reason on the river is for trade. Okay, so that meant trade was easier, business started to follow, and very quickly it grew up into the city that it is now. Okay, so it's been there for a very, very long time, but mainly it was the access to trade on the river. Very near the ocean or the sea, so very near the estuary, which is now Tilbury Docks. Easy to get goods in and out, which is why the Docklands grew up there and handled the main amount of goods coming into our country. Okay, and then they were taken out on the canal network to the rest of the country, which is that other little video I showed you when I went for my walk along the canal. What else do we know about London? It's a polycentric city. It seems to have lots of mini CBDs. So you've got the theatre district, the West End, you've got Westminster, and the political part of it here with the Houses of Parliament and Westminster. You've got Tower Bridge up here, which is where the Tower of London is. And then up here, the Isle of Dogs, now Canary Wharf, is where you've got the financial centre, publishing as well. So it's polycentric. London has local, regional and world importance. It is a urban primacy, so it's more important than its size would suggest. It's incredibly well connected. It's got the orbital motorway of the M25, which then links off to all the major centres of the UK via lots of other different motorways. It's also the focus of the rail network with all the main rail termini there, like Waterloo and Paddington. It's got 5 international airports and a business airport at Heathrow. Okay, which Heathrow has 5 terminals. You've got everything you need on this slide. It is the international financial centre of Europe and one of the 3 world financial cities alongside New York and Tokyo. And many of the global banks like HSBC have their headquarters there. Many TNCs have located here their headquarters, okay, in London and along the M4 corridor. And then this in turn provides lots of other opportunities for other businesses, which is why there is so much economic activity in the southeast. And then finally, it is the largest and most affluent, that means richest, market in the economy, in the UK, sorry. Okay, so that will give you a bit of an idea. That'll be a 2 marker or a 1 marker on London's regional or global importance. Pause me here and you can make some notes on that, can't you, if you want to. So to summarise, London's site, its connectivity and its importance, all up there. Look now at how the population structure of London is so different to that of England as a whole. Look at the shape of England's population pyramid, very, very standard for a more developed country, but look at London's. There aren't a lot of older people there. They've moved out to the country to retire, but look at this bulge down here. Look at the age group here. These are all the people moving to London for employment and opportunity, and that in turn pushes up the birth rate. Okay, migration as well has had an impact on London because migrants come to London to look for work. That's where all the work is, and that pushes the birth rate up as well. And London's ethnic composition, it is the most diverse city in the UK, and if I recall off the top of my head, well over 50% of the population of London were born outside the UK. So immigration has had a significant impact on London's population structure. And then we learnt a little bit about Canary Wharf, didn't we? So there's a lot of parts in London that have experienced regeneration and rebranding, Canary Wharf being one of the examples of that. This used to be a dockland handling all the goods coming in to the UK. However, as we know, due to containerisation, the ships got too big for the Thames and the docks closed, which led to mass unemployment, a lot of decline, a lot of deprivation, and much of these areas are now being regenerated. And this is Canary Wharf. That's the very famous building. And these would have been where they used to store goods along the sides of the canals coming off the river. These are now turned into luxury apartments. This slide's a little bit harder. There is a lot more FDI in the UK. It has increased by 88% since 2005 until 2015. And this is because there's been a lot of investment in banking and finance. So not factories, banking and finance, and London as a global centre. Okay, there's lots of trade deals that happen here, and lots of countries make imports and exports cheaper by using and creating UK jobs as well. Okay, so you've got some information on there about FDI in the UK. It will just be a 2 or a 4 marker. Okay, so we are still involved in a lot of trade. It's just that it is very, very different. And the UK governments have encouraged this FDI by privatising industries and allowing foreign companies to buy them. So there are more foreign companies operating what used to be British companies. TNCs, therefore, have brought lots of advantages. There's been an investment of £1 trillion UK pounds in the UK, which has created thousands and thousands of jobs. But the disadvantage is competition, and many of these TNCs have outcompeted UK companies, which has led to their closure and loss of jobs that way. Again, pause me here, make some notes on that. It will probably be a 4 marker, but you do need to know what FDI is, foreign direct investment, so investment by foreign companies, foreign countries, and why it has increased. And it's due to that investment in banking and finance and the privatisation of industry. Okay, this is a slide you definitely may want to pause me on. I'm sorry for covering myself up at the bottom there. So David, we should have stood somewhere else when we were doing this. And this is your urban regeneration in Stratford. And I'm going to try and do you a story time for this. But on this side of the slide, you can see what it was like before. A lot of deprivation, okay, a lot of low-income families there. And it was regenerated following the Olympics. And it was renamed Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. And it's brought many, many, many positives to this area, including a new school, lots of new homes, lots of jobs. But there's always buts, aren't there? There's always buts in geography. And many of the jobs that were created were not suitable for the local people or were low skill, low pay. And many, or the vast majority of the houses were not affordable, and only a small proportion were affordable. So actually what it did is it pushed out the EastEnders, it pushed them away, and it's ended up being taken over by wealthy people. Okay, so pause me on that if you wish, and you can make some notes because you do need to know your case study of regeneration. Right, we're nearly there. You do need tool do for affordable, sustainable London. So what's been done to make London a more sustainable city? You can talk about more green spaces. You can talk about the congestion charge, the ULEZ to stop and reduce air pollution. You can talk about all the hybrid buses that are in London and all the charging points for electric vehicles. You can also talk about the recycling, which is quite challenging in London, but they do aim to recycle 50% of all household rubbish by 2030. Okay, so there's some things you can include, and also how any of this regeneration does try to include affordable homes. Right, I'm going to finish on showing you another 8 marker for urban areas. And I'm going to talk to you again about the key themes that you always need to keep at the back of your mind, which are where people live in the country, so the population structure and the population density, the difference between urban areas and rural areas and the reasons for that. They're the main things that are going to thread through on this. So it will always be comparing urban and rural and the population structures. Okay. On this one, for example, you've got analyse the information in figure 6, which includes the different age structures of the urban and rural populations in England. Be careful because you're used to seeing it the other way around, so always use the key. This side is rural. Notice the age of the people. There are some young people there because they've still got to go to school, but look what happens as soon as they can leave. All of a sudden, once they finish school or college, they're off and then move into the city. Whereas on the urban area, you've got people of economic working age. So the economically active, and here you've got retirement. Don't forget these people as well, the youngsters. What are you going to do? Traditional industries, fishing, farming, forestry, not for me, thank you very much, and you move into the city. Assess the possible causes for the differences in the age structure of England's urban and rural populations. Notice this sentence, everybody. You must use evidence from figure 6 in your answer, or you will not get more than 4 marks. You have to quote information, or at least talk about higher percentages between this age and that age compared to lower percentages. If you're not even going to quote the actual percentages, use more, less, a lot more, a lot less. On the final slide, I've given you a way that you can build your populations. And I'm telling you, Sir David, forgive me for mentioning you again, to write like Sir David. Use words like urban core, rural areas, traditional industries, job opportunities, employment opportunities, out-migration, young, retirement, okay? You're going to do at least 3 paragraphs. You start with the first paragraph. One difference between the population structure in rural areas compared to urban core is there are more, less people aged. That's your point. For example, that's your evidence. And then you're giving a reason. One reason for this could be, another reason for that could be. Another difference between the population structure is this. For example, a reason for this might be, a reason for that might be. And don't forget, your final paragraph is overall. What is the most important reason? What is the most important reason for the difference between the population structure of the urban areas compared to the rural areas? In this 8 marker, you might get information on carbon emissions. So they're looking if you know if there's difference between the carbon emissions for different activities compared to rural and urban areas. You may get something about universities or jobs or house prices, but it will always link to urban versus rural, urban versus rural. That's nearly every time. That is your core concept. Go back to that first slide at the beginning of this video, look at the core concepts and find what the question is about, and then use that information to help you answer. Okay, this was a long one. Break it down into sections when you're revising. Maybe do the core concepts first, have a rest, then come back and do London, have a rest, and then maybe come back and do the 8 marker section and have a rest. Okay, I love the fact there's the 2 will do up there right on top of Sir David, so remember 2 will do. Okay, right, I will do some fieldwork ones, probably like a story time, and I may, if I have time, do you a London story time.